companies left, virtually ceased to exist. But what is the economy of Bisbee now? How do people support themselves now? Because it seems pretty isolated.
It's very isolated. That question is easy. It doesn't have an economy, essentially. There's a really good restaurant in town. There's a couple of good places. People go. It often wins like quirkiest town in America awards, and so that helps with the tourism. There's definitely ghost town things, people go ghost tours, and there's a tourist element certainly to going in the mines. You see people, going in as tourists in the mines. Tourism is a big part of it, but it's a town. I mean, in some ways, it's a town that's like trying to sustain its 5,000 people well, right? So like restaurants open that are geared towards tourists sometimes, but really, how do we keep 100 people coming every week? So that means like you're catering to artists, and you're catering to like people who want to go find a place to buy organic, wine or whatever. It has this weird thing of like really like if you open a place in Bisbee, it really the locals need to want to come, and there's not many of the locals, but it also needs to appeal to tourists when they're driving through and they're like, oh, I want to stop at that cute place there, So that's essentially the economy. I started going in 2003 because my mother-in-law bought a mining cabin to be like a family, getaway place, and it's a very weird place to have a vacation because it's strange. But she's a historian, so she like found out about Bisbee and knew some of the history, and she told me when I first visited, she's like, you should go buy this book, Bisbee 17, which is written by Robert Houston. We borrowed the title, which is about.
You stole the title.
Well, you can't steal titles. Laws. There's laws. But I can tell you, we've become friends with Robert Houston since making the film, and he sold out every single copy of his book on tour with us. So there you go. So we made him some money. But I read Bisbee 17, and that was how most people had heard the deportation in the 70s, and still it didn't get that much traction, but it was enough. And I fell in love with this place and was horrified by it at the same time. But I had a family reason to go back there. My wife was born in Tucson, and we have family there, and there was always reasons to go back.
Did you have one more? Yeah, but this is just keeps me from having to go on Wikipedia. What happened to them?
What happened to you can't find that on Wikipedia because only recently have people been trying to figure out what happened. I just got, someone tweeted at me, and it's like, I love the movie, but it's half the movie it should be because you didn't explain what happened to them. And I guess I'm really happy that people would be wanting to know what happened to men that were lost to history completely. So John C. Greenway had the brilliant, idiotic idea that these were all traitors. The war was going on, and these were traitors to our country. And so let's take them to the Army base in Columbus, New Mexico, and leave them with the Army. That was his big idea. And of course, when he got there, the Army said, "You can't do that. These men are starving, and we're not taking these men." And there were no kidnapping laws. There were no kidnapping laws until the Lindbergh trial a few years, like 5 years later, was introduced sort of kidnapping laws in general. So not just through state, but just in general kidnapping laws. And then, so basically there was nothing to charge anybody on, even though people were charged. But then, so the trains, the company-owned trains backed up 45 minutes into the desert and literally just kicked people out. And around there, a camp was set up that was like, to try to get, Rosa McKay, who you meet briefly in the film, and you can read a lot more about Rosa because she's a hero. She went to the camp and tried to get people water, and there were lawyers who showed up that started taking people's names. No Mexicans were interviewed, or their names were never taken. So even the very thorough historical records are lacking the major story of all the Mexicans that were deported. But most of them ended up, once they got fired from the mines and were deported, most of them ended up being drafted to go to war. So the brutal irony was that they were deported for being anti-American, socialist, communist, whatever, and they ended up becoming part of the war machine and died in the war. Some had some incredible stories. So there's one guy who was deported and made his way to California to work in the onion fields, and then became a police officer and was on the cover of the LA Times in the 40s because he saved a girl and became like a citywide hero. Like he jumped in front of a girl that was going to be hit by a car and became a hero. And they have his entire biography, where he was born, whatever. But of course, they don't say that he was deported for being wobbly. You know, like and then one other person ended up in the Japanese internment camps. Like he was serving food in LA Stadium or wherever it was happening. I don't remember exactly where it was happening, but where he was exactly. But in internment camps. So he was on the other side after being deported all those years ago.
Sounds like a sequel to me. Last question from this gentleman, Mr. Steve Buck.
So, have you shown the film in Bisbee, and of all the people who were in the film, whose reaction to the film threw you or surprised you, or was not, something complex?
Thanks, Steve. We have shown the film in Bisbee, so we went back. Our plan is to go back every year for the centennial or the anniversary of the deportation. So we went back for the 101st anniversary. We had a 2-day symposium where we had a day of of panels and discussions, and then we played the film 3 times in a row, all sellouts. And we had played the film for the subjects before we premiered at Sundance. So we brought it to Sierra Vista, which is 45 minutes away, because we knew we would never be able to secretly screen it in Bisbee. Everyone would know where to go and figure it out, and we would be bombarded, which is cool because they all want to see the movie. But they came in July, and it was, I don't know. I mean, the truth is like, I wish it was more complex, frankly, because I felt like we got there and we stirred shit up and really got in there. I think the reaction, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the reaction so far has been 100% positive. I mean, people are incredibly emotional about the film. I think some Bisbee residents still haven't heard of the deportation. The people involved were proud to be a part of it. I think people were standing on stage saying this story will never be buried again, things like that. And I was like, yeah, but it's ethically complex, right? And they're like, no. It was really cool to do this, and we believe it. Now, we really are going to come back, and I do think that there's a chance that the film will get more complicated as it ages. I think there might be excitement around what it is now. But we just brought the film back again so we released in New York, and instead of going to LA, we went to Arizona, and we sold out another screening in Bisbee, and it was just, there was a lot of tears, and there weren't even questions. It was all just like, thank you for doing this, and I didn't know about this, or my grandfather was on that train, or there was just so many reactions. And I guess James remains a complicated figure. He came to Sundance and stood on stage and said, "You can't help but change having done this." And we didn't know what that meant, but that was a pretty emotional thing to hear. And then he didn't come to the talk because he was like, you invited activists, and I read somewhere that activists are going to beat me up, basically, because I have right-wing views. So but then he showed up for the release, and he represented the film and did a Q&A with Mary Ellen and his girlfriend, and they loved the movie. And so that's complex, I guess, and he's still working through it, and he I guess he says, I played that bastard really well, didn't I? That's how he thinks it, and I think he did. I think he really did find a way to, play that bastard really well. So I think that actually the responses are going to get more complex as the film ages. Right now, it's a lot of real love, and that's nice because I love the place and I love being there, and I'm glad we didn't make a film that embarrassed anybody. We didn't make a film that made anybody feel bad. I don't think. And maybe the people that feel bad just haven't come to these screenings, but there's only so many people in town, so far it's been good.
Love's a good thing.
Love is a good thing. The movie ends with a lot of love. I know that's cheesy, but on a day like today, you fucking need love, man. We need love, Steve. Thanks for coming, and thanks for doing this, Steve. Really